can't buy. It resides between my eyes. Walked through the fire, came out better on the other side. See, life's like a beach if you find the sand. And right now, I feel like 100 grand.
You are listening to Inspired Insider with your host, Dr. Jeremy Wise.
Dr. Jeremy Wise here, founder of InspiredInsider.com, where I talk with inspirational entrepreneurs and leaders. Today is no different. I have Scott Knox of the ICA.ca. You can check him out, the Institute of Canadian Agencies. And Scott, before I formally introduce you, I always like to point out other episodes people should check out of the podcast. And since this is part of the Top Agency series, actually the Institute of Canadian Agencies, Scott, has been mentioned on multiple episodes of the podcast, including Howard Chang, who is an ICA member, the Turn Lab. It was a fascinating interview of how he's built up his agency and previous companies that he's run. Devin McDonald, who I believe is on the board, he's mentioned the Institute of Canadian Agencies, and he talked about empowering his team and his journey there, and that was an amazing episode. Two, there's so many more. Another one that sticks out, Kevin Hurrigan of Spinutech. He's had an agency since 1995. So it was fascinating to hear kind of the evolution of the internet, business and agency life, and how that, people, I watched a webinar with you, Scott, right after COVID, and you're talking about COVID, like he's probably experienced like 6 different versions of, COVIDs over his career or more. So that was a fascinating one, and check out more on InspiredInsider.com. And this episode is brought to you by Rise 25. Rise 25, we help businesses give to and connect to their dream relationships and partnerships. And how do we do that? We do that by helping you run your podcast. We're an easy button for a company to launch and run a podcast. We do the accountability, the strategy, and the full execution. Scott, we kind of call ourselves the magic elves that run around in the background and make it look easy for the host and the company so they can create amazing content and develop amazing relationships, and most importantly, run their business. For me, the number one thing in my life is relationships. I'm always looking at ways to give to my best relationships, and I have found no better way over the past decade to profile the people and companies I most admire and share with the world what they're working on. So if you've thought about podcasting, you should. If you have questions, you can go to rise25.com or email us at support@rise25.com to learn more. I'm excited to introduce Scott. Scott Knox is the president and CEO of the Institute of Canadian Agencies. You can check him out, the ICA.ca. He has nearly 30 years of experience in the business of advertising and marketing. Scott is also the founder of PrideAM, Pride in Advertising and Marketing. It's the ad world's first ever LGBTQ plus advocacy group. He started back in 2015, was even named top 25 most powerful LGBTQ plus leaders in British business by the Telegraph. Scott, thanks for joining me.
Thank you very much for asking me.
So let's start off with the Institute of Canadian Agencies and what the ICA does.
Yeah, I put in its simplest terms, because I have been warned that I can talk for many hours about this one. So the ICA exists to positively impact the business environment for agencies to thrive. And what that really means is that we believe at the heart of the ICA, as it was in 1905 when 4 agency leaders got together and decided that they needed to work together for common good. The ICA is about collective endeavor. We impact and try and influence the business environment and our own members and their people in the industry in a collective manner. We do the things that no individual agency can do on their own. So it's about looking at government relations with society, education, and clients. And by clients, I mean those brands that we deliver the marketing and advertising work for. So yes, it's about collective endeavor and impacting that to make sure it's rightly so where it needs to be for Canadian agencies to thrive and grow.
Scott, if someone's listening to the audio, there is a video version, and we're on the ICA.ca site, so you'll be able to see that. But one question I have is, it's always fascinating with any groups, whether it's can institute or association or membership group. Why do people join? I'm looking here at the member benefits, but why do people join the ICA?
Yeah, really for two reasons. One, to take their part at the table in understanding and pushing for a stronger business environment for us to thrive. So it's that, again, that collective endeavor element. But actually, many agencies join because of the consultancy services that we deliver to the industry, whether it be on training, developing talent. We're doing a lot of training with agencies right now on changing their pricing model, looking at how to get away from input costs and to output success and our RFI, RFP, no, wrong, ROI. I'll get one of those right. Far too many acronyms in our industry.
Exactly.
ROI based pricing. So rather than how much does that cost to produce, well, actually, what will that generate? And so helping agencies to have better successful remuneration and actually focus the client on success driving as opposed to how many hours will that take to put together. And so we do a lot of that consultancy work, helping agencies to be able to thrive in a market that's successful for them. And the other thing is really the heart of it is also that networking element. We have a number of advisory groups within the organization, whether they be around talent development, diversity and inclusion, whether it be on agency growth, whether it be on creativity, on strategy development. So where the industry gets together with like-minded individuals to unpack and understand problems and issues, and to get to what was at the heart of us, co-creating solutions for them. So there's a whole array of services we deliver that actually help agencies on an individual basis improve performance, gain recognition, and we sort of baggage that up into we're here to help agencies amplify, protect, and transform their business.
Talk about the opportunities. I want to talk about what you were saying before about the training, the pricing model. But before we talk about that, what are the opportunities from a networking perspective? I'm seeing there's the advisory groups. How do those work?
Yeah, they work on the basis of understanding that actually sometimes the best way to deal with an industry issue is to do it through collective endeavor, to learn and understand from peers who's approached that, been challenged by that, and what do we do about it? Or even in some instances, they'll come up with a solution that needs collective endeavor. One of my favorite ways of showing how this works was when we had a group of agencies come together to look at the fact that we were being continually challenged as an industry. This isn't just a Canadian problem, it's a global problem, on being commoditized, on being remunerated by hourly rate rather than by outcome generation and success generation and business innovation and growth. And the process of new business was run by procurement, was becoming more and more taxing, was actually becoming more about show me the rates of an account director, what do you pay them, and getting down into that sort of minutia. And there was points in time where you'd have an entire pitch process that a client would deploy into the industry, where you'd have, I don't know, an open cattle call, if you like, for the entire industry to respond. And each of them would have to put forward brand new creative ideas to win the business. And apart from that being costly, inefficient, but also, why would a client select an agency on the basis of them coming up with a new ad campaign in a vacuum, having never worked on the business and with no idea whatsoever? And so what we did was the industry sort of said, well, what can we do to intervene here? How can we get clients to do pitch review process, agency search in a better way? And that's when we came up with Pitch Watch, which was a service whereby agencies can notify us where there's a client review process underway that won't get the client the right results that they need. And when we verified that that process is in play and impacts multiple agencies, then we actually contact the client and say, look, this review process you're using is not best practice standards. It's actually going to be really inefficient and it's not going to get you the results you want. Here is an entire template of how to do it better. And then we consult with that client group to actually repackage its review process to make it more fair and equitable, and ultimately get the client the best partnership with an agency that it can deliver. There's a lot of mess and nonsense in the whole agency pitch process that's decades old in the making. And what we try and do is get that to be much more robust. And part of it, we built a thing. My dear colleague Leah Power, who's my EVP, and her background is actually, she was chief operating officer for Grey Advertising and also DDP, as well as a number of independent agencies. And she helped us build this toolkit called qualification-based selection, which is a really robust, focused way of selecting an agency in a process that's fair and equitable and will ultimately get the client the best results. So the pitch watch thing was something that came out of a cry by agencies to go, we've all got this problem, what do we do about it? And then the agency sector came together and put the ICA in a position to go, okay, let us step in and see if we can build and develop better best practice.
Obviously a hot topic of discussion is pricing.
Yes.
You mentioned that, and you mentioned ROI-based pricing. What are some of the mistakes that you see agencies making, or they're coming to you, that they are making around pricing?
Oh, there's the number one that is assumption. So, at the end of the day, what we want to do is have a client pay an agency on the basis of not how many hours it takes and how much that production cost, but actually get to the front end of what is the return on investment? What is the value for the corporation that's delivered by this agency partnership? The problem is that the way that procurement works, it's in a very much a commodity-based understanding of what you're purchasing. It's very easy to compare apples with apples if you're purchasing commodities, tires, pens, grain, etc. The problem is that trying to transpose that method of procurement from commodity purchasing in commodities over to consultancy services, whether it be advertising agencies, law firms, design, anything like that, is it becomes really difficult, because actually just making a price determinant assumes that every agency is the same, and it's not. And what may take one creative director 10 minutes to come up with versus 10 hours that may happen in other agencies, to do with expertise and growth and knowledge and development. And so what we try and do is get the agency to say, look, we want to be remunerated on the basis of what value we deliver back to the brand, the success we drive with you. The problem from an agency perspective is they normally, because actually this whole problem with commoditized purchasing by procurement has led the agency sector into some very bad habits, that it's got itself very much entangled in responding to client wishes on a commodity understanding. And so we often find when we go in and work with an agency on moving from commodity-based pricing, input-based pricing, to outcome and success, value-based pricing, they've got 75,000 reasons why the client won't accept it before they've even talked to the client. And it's based on assumptions and based on that sort of legacy of the past 10, 15 years of being beaten up by procurement, those conditioning questions that say, oh, yeah, we'd love to work with you, but the agency down the road is 28% cheaper. What can you do about that? Those conditioning questions that procurement do all the time, which may work well in commodity purchasing, but they don't work well in consultancy-based services. So we find that assumptions are the real challenge. Once you get an agency over that, working with some of the best procurement minds and agency relationship minds of the world, we worked out that for every 1% of change from commodity-based pricing to value-based pricing will deliver an agency about 10% increase in profitability. So it's something to really work hard at and transition over time, and being careful and consultative and working with the client. And being ready to have that conversation that says why you want to be remunerated on the basis of your client's success is a challenging and very cerebral conversation to have, but it's something the agency sector needs to get its head around, and procurement need to be ready to have those grown-up business conversations on behalf of their corporation. Look, at the end of the day, the thing we know is that procurement in most corporations is charged with cost saving. So it is charged with getting partner businesses and achieving X percentage of cost. Once that partner's on board, for most corporations, procurement then wash their hands and walk away. They're never there to be part of whether that they're never remunerated or reviewed or managed in a way that says, well, was outcome successful? And unless we get procurement to not only look at selecting and helping corporations select partners, but then being responsible for that partnership success, then we'll continue to languish as an industry and marketing and it being a cost-based commodity purchasing system.
Scott, what are some ways people, because, agencies are used to doing things, maybe they've been doing it for 5 or 10 years that way. And now it's like, they know there's a better way. And obviously the ICA is telling them there is a better way, value-based pricing. What are some things that they can do to start to step into approaching it from that vantage point with the client? And I just want to say one thing before you answer that, which is, I love what you said. It reminds me, and I don't know, this story was attributed to Picasso, I believe. You probably heard it, where someone approached Picasso and then took him like 30 seconds to like do some kind of piece of art. And it's like, that's whatever, $10,000, $20,000. That only took you 30 seconds. And he responds, well, it took me 40 years actually to do that, right? Which is a similar thing.
Yeah, a more up-to-date version of that would be Elton John. I mean, it's and there are various documentaries showing him doing it. He will, when he gets the lyrics from Bernie Taupin, it will take him maximum 15, 20 minutes to write a beautiful piece of music to accompany those lyrics. Now, if he was if he was remunerated, I mean, he would never afford the suits and the houses and whatever. If he was remunerated as a commodity on an hourly rate, he wouldn't be the rich and successful musician that he is. And it's exactly the same, 60 plus years of experience and dedication to his craft is what delivers that. So yeah, we need to treat consultancy and creative people with their legacy of understanding, not how long it takes them to get there. That's not how the world works. And actually the long-term effect will be, if that's how clients want to work, they'll drive down their marketing effectiveness. So everything will go down for them in the end.
So when people are asking that, like, what are the first couple steps we should start taking to really start offering more of a value-based pricing? Because some agencies are maybe used to just not.
Yeah. The easiest thing, so one of the things that we do, and just to sort of put this in context, with member agencies, one of the first things we do when they join, or we do on an annual basis with existing members, is a thing called an agency performance pit stop. This is where we did sit down with the management team and unpack the success and failure statistics and skills of that agency. So ask the leadership team, what are you good at and bad at? And when we capture that, what that leads to then is invariably a much greater ownership of destiny. The route to value-based pricing can often be to start with, through a process like that, looking at something, and we didn't invent this. It was something that I heard of in the UK and have heard of by many consultants in the US. And that is to look at client segmentation. Now, what that means is, in very simple terms, apply one of the 5 Fs to every single client that you have. Fame, fun, fortune, fitness, and finally fire. And that journey to owning your destiny and understanding why that client is in the building and you work for them and you have certain teams working on them, you have to analyze and unpack how successful they are for your business. So if a client is a fame client, then it means it's going to lead to other new business, award wins, etc. Understand that. Finance, that means actually it's bringing the dollars in. It's a very lucrative account to have in the building, and you may compromise the fame for it. Fame, fun, fun is all about where they actually give you the energy to do something different. You often see within creative teams, they'll deploy or should deploy creative teams working on a good balance of fortune and fun accounts to keep their juices flowing, their creative integrity and hunger and innovation driving. Fame, fun, fortune, fitness is where you actually can show a capability of you are a specialist in a particular area, or you can transpose that specialism into another area of value. And the thing with the fifth F, fire, is if the client doesn't give you one of those four Fs, what the hell is it in the business for? So you fire them, replace them. So we start with agencies to unpack why every client is in the building. And the fewer Fs, that leads you to a conclusion of we've been so commoditized and so driven in a particular way. What we need to do is reverse the fortune on this, push it towards being purposeful and understanding why I want to work with this client. And if they are not a fortune client, could value-based pricing deliver that to you? Because at the end of the day, when a client is more financially delivering to the agency business, you can grow that by training and developing your talent, by employing really high weight consultancy externally on to deliver more and better for that client. And so we start with, let's segment your clients. Let's see what they're all in the building for. And ultimately, the reason doing that, so I've been 22 years now running trade bodies for the agency sector, 15 in the UK and 7 here in Canada. And one of the things that I noticed is that when people start an agency, they start it with all the notions of they're small, they're nimble, they're this, they're price competitive. All of that is fine. Great. That's your rally cry when you've opened your doors. Fantastic. I've seen it so many times over the 22 years. The narrative's all the same. We're new, we're nimble, we're da-da-da. We're not like those big agencies, which in essence is saying we're cheaper, right? There comes a point when that agency grows in its success where it flips over into being a larger agency. And what happens is the agency and the clients end up driving the management team rather than the management team driving the agency, because the management team end up firefighting and dealing with client needs, and they stop looking after the business. And the whole point about value-based pricing, client segmentation, anything about innovating, developing your agency, you have to take a step back, create some bandwidth in the management team's eye line and brain capacity in order to go, yeah, okay, this is what we're doing and not we're doing. We forgot that X number of years ago, we got out of bed, we left our previous agency to set this up, and now we've recreated exactly what we left in the first place. Okay, we need to stop now and design the agency to work for us. And ultimately, when an agency management team design an agency that works for them, it equally works for the client. That's what leads you to, we have to value-based price. We have to look at a co-joined relationship on driving success for the agency, for the client. And a client should want that. A client should want its agency to be successful because it will get better results and deliver marketing effectiveness, share price value, sales increase, whatever its metrics are. It will deliver that if its agencies are successful. Unfortunately, we live in a world at the moment where procurement are not focused on the success of their agency partners. They just want to smack them down into a cost fight. That is not in their interest, not in ours. So we have to create that bandwidth in agency management teams to take back their ownership of their agency and come out designing it to work for them and ultimately their clients.
Scott, I'm curious, what brought you to the ICA?
Yes. So 2015, I happened to be in Toronto. My dear sister, who's a doctor in psychology, fabulous woman, and she offered to look after our 2 kids during school term time to give me and my husband a break. And we decided bizarrely on a city holiday. Why we didn't just sit by a pool in Greece for 2 weeks, I don't know. But this was our thinking in 2015. Probably we were younger there and decided anyway. we came to Toronto because I actually had some family that I hadn't met since I was a kid here, and we'd never been to Canada. But at the time, work-wise, I was also involved in a bit of a battle with the alcohol giant Anheuser-Busch InBev on an e-auction platform they were deploying for agency selection. And it was one that was springing up as a similar problem in other countries. So I was reaching out to other associations around the world to build a bit of an alliance to go, what are we going to do with this, people? And to share information and knowledge on this. And I'd never had anything to do with the Canadian agency body. And so I just Googled it, found the ICA, and met up with Gillian, my predecessor. We had breakfast, great chat, understood a bit more, and decided to cooperate on a few initiatives. I went back to the UK, carried on, thought nothing of it. 2016, she contacted me and said that she was retiring, and had I ever considered moving to Canada? My instant response was, God, no. I have just put a deposit down on a brand new car, which my mum and dad got 2 months after we got it. And we just finished doing up the house. And so actually, no, it wasn't a plan to move countries at all. But when we sat down and unpacked the whole thing, bearing in mind in 2016, we'd just been through the Brexit vote and Britain was turning uglier. The racism and bigotry that was unveiled and in some quarters celebrated as part of that campaign. And we, myself and my husband, being in a same-sex marriage and having 2 mixed race adopted kids, we ultimately decided actually maybe Canada's the right country to bring up our children. And so I decided to go for it and apply for the job of running the ICA with Gillian's blessing, and then started on the 1st of November 2016. So that it was really looking at it from a family perspective. Where's the best place for our kids, and bringing them up, and that's what Canada and the Trudeau hype. Okay, things have changed. Things have unveiled about Mr. Trudeau. Let's not talk about the trip to India or the blackface scandal. But nevertheless, the narrative was that Canada was a better place. And actually living here, it is. It's not without its problems, but it is a far, far better country to be bringing up our children. And actually for our lives too, me and my husband as well. So that was the attraction of Canada. I was aware of going from London, Toronto, in terms of eye line of ad perspective, because London and New York are the agreed global capitals of our industry. Toronto wasn't. And what's interesting is 7 years on from that, actually, Toronto and Canada are better than they think they are. And so I've done a complete U-turn, and actually I'm really thankful for it. Having moved here for family reasons, now I've got my teeth into it's now for the industry too. Canada can kick ass when given the opportunity to deliver great marcoms. And there are some fantastic Canadians in different agencies and global roles around the world. And so I've done a bit of a U-turn on my perspectives on how good, bad, indifferent the Canadian marketing and advertising industry is. But the initial driver was family.
Scott, when you say racism was unveiled, what did you experience?
It was more to do with what friends were experiencing. A friend of ours, the day after the Brexit vote, was in a supermarket. She is of Japanese descent, but born in Britain. And somebody in that supermarket took the decision to walk up to her and say, "Why don't you F off back to your own country?" The Brexit vote gave certain people in Britain the license to vocalize something they'd been, because of political correctness perhaps established in the 80s. They suddenly had permission to vocalize. The narrative of the Brexit campaign was really racist. and had resonance from propagandist campaigns that we'd seen in Europe before in the 1930s and 40s. And seeing that, watching the communications and the poster campaigns and the ads and the rhetoric of some of the leaders involved in the Brexit on the Leave campaign side, and then seeing some of our friends experience it. And then our kids are mixed race. And even at school, you could see in the school playground, they went to one of the best schools in Southwest London, but in the school playground, this is a primary school, you'd see the white parents, mums predominantly on one side, and you'd see the smaller contingent of the mums of colour on their own in another. It was transparent, the divide in the United Kingdom, and I don't see that here. Yes, there are problems in Canada, but I don't see that. It's not as prevalent in Canada as it was in the UK. And when you look at it through the race lens and saw the narrative and then saw the experiences and just went, okay, this is all wrong. This is absolutely all wrong, and we have to protect our children. And because their mixed race comes from their birth father, who's Iraqi Muslim. Of course, Islamophobia in the UK was prevalent, and people felt that they could say. And I remember one time, one of the biggest things that dropped into my mind, and this happened in 2016. We were driving, the four of us, myself, my husband, and the two kids, driving to go for lunch. And there was a local cab company that we always used to use. This is pre-Uber days. And the cab company was just around the corner from our house. Great family-run business. But my daughter, as we were driving past the cab company, she said, "Daddy, do I have to be a cab driver when I grow up?" And I stopped. Why'd you ask that? Well, because they're all the same color as me in the cab company, and most other people are white. And that is where everything becomes in stark. The visibility, the seeing yourself representation suddenly became much more prevalent in mine and my husband's minds. And constantly unpacking and understand our own white privilege to go, we need to see this from their perspective to help them, and support them. When you have, it didn't take much to have a comment like that from your daughter that makes you realize and understand, actually, we've got to paint a different picture here. And it's why we very deliberately live in Scarborough, because they go to a school where white is the minority in the school. They get to mix with people of color on a regular and daily basis, and that was important for us to facilitate. So seeing the racism, my daughter's question, Brexit, all of that mean actually there's a problem here, Houston. We need to protect the children. We need to get on with where they will thrive and flourish. And that's why the Canadian decision was made.
What made you, start PrideAM?
that was a very interesting. So I went to and oddly, this was just before Brexit. In 2015, I went to an event in Rome called the Global Festival of Media, and I was asked to sit on a panel talking about diversity, equity, and inclusion. Now, this was before DEI was fashionable. So I flew into Rome, went to this event. This was this huge auditorium space. God knows how many people were in there, and they all had desks. It was like huge. And then there was a session before us, and I can't remember what that was, but the room was packed to hear this. And then we were announced, me and three other people, three women, were announced as in the next session, diversity, equity, inclusion. And we started walking towards the stage, and all but about 40 people left the room. I would say about 90% of the people got up and walked out. And we sat there and we did our DEI piece. And even the host, the moderator, apologized to us for the number of people who left, because what became obvious is the people asking us questions and the conversation in the room with the 40 or 50 so left, they were converts. They were already working on this. It was and that wasn't who I was there to talk to. It was those who didn't get DEI that I needed to express and engage and so on. And then later that afternoon, we were invited to a drinks reception out by the pool at this rather expensive hotel. I tell you how expensive this hotel was. I can't remember the name of it. Penelope Cruz was lying by the pool, right? While we were all up having drinks and somebody was playing a harp. It was all very beautiful. And the thing was, I was talking to the group of women that I was on the panel with, and I just picked up this odd vibe at this drinks reception. And every time I turned around and looked at most of the men who were at this, they would sort of bristle and almost turn away. I felt like I was back in the school playground. It was really bizarre. And I said this to one of my colleagues from the panel, and she was like, "No, you're being paranoid, Scott. Honestly, these are business grown-up people." And I said, "Right, watch." And I turned to, as if to motion towards walking towards this group of 5 men who were looking towards me, and they all literally turned their back towards me. And I thought, oh my God, this is 2015 people. What the hell's going on? And so I was asked to do a video piece by Starcom, their US office, one of their US offices. And the question that was posed as soon as I did this video piece to camera was, what have you learnt here at the Festival of Media that you'll take back and get organized in the UK? And I literally, without thinking, without even knowing if there already was one, said, I need to start a pro LGBTQ plus organization for those in advertising and marketing, because people shouldn't have to experience what I've experienced at this event. And then I got home and my husband said to me, oh, great. Oh, great. So we hardly see you as it is. So you're going to do another volunteer thing. Oh, great. He got what I was trying to do, but it was not that. And then I established it. It was actually my son who came up with the name, and he drew the logo. And obviously it was more digitized and finessed by a good creative team, but it was something organic, and it was a reaction. It seems to be, actually, now that I'm saying this out loud, it seems to be able to do a lot of things by reaction. Move to Canada, reaction. PrideAM, reaction. But that is the truism. PrideAM came out of a very horrible, almost triggering experience at a so-called extensive event for our industry, where there were lots of leaders from around the world and going, no, I'm not having others in my community experience this. This is wrong. So that's where PrideAM came from, and it just started, and then people got volunteered and involved, and brought it here to Canada. They rebranded PrideAM in the UK. It's called Advertising now. A US one's established called Do the Work, WERQ. So yeah, I mean, that's where it came from. A reaction to some nasty men at a conference.
I'm sure, Scott, that your video testimonial didn't make to the front of their video pitch for next year's event.
Probably not. Probably not. I mean, look, they've actually, in fairness to the event, they've done DEI stuff every year. And of course, when it became the thing, then it was a packed room of attendance. So I applaud the organizers of the event of the International Festival, the Global Festival of Media, for putting DEI on the panel before everybody else was making their fashionable credentials to wear. So it wasn't the event that was the problem, and it was very bold of them. And they were very honest with the room about what they thought was good and bad about the audience's response. So it wasn't the event that was wrong. It was perhaps the audience.
Yeah, I mean, obviously they were featuring that panel. So
yeah.
what was the original idea behind PrideAM? Was it going to be an association of sorts? Was it going to be an agency serving companies who were pro LGBTQ plus? What was the original idea behind the
Yeah,
organization?
the original idea was to really look at two things. One, how LGBTQ plus people feel and are supported in our industry for being their true authentic selves, and new entrants into the industry, and also to impact our outputs as an industry. I mean, it wasn't that long ago that Mars ran a campaign in Spain that was really homophobic. Their whole strategy of once you eat a Snickers and you're not hungry, you are your normal self. And the campaign that ran, and it was pulled when it was criticized, was of a rather flamboyant character sat at a pool bar, flapping their hands, acting all those tropisms of being a camp gay man. And then as soon as he took a bite of Snickers, then turned into an ordinary Joe Blow. And the homophobia of that was unreal. And so we were still seeing an industry pumping out comms that were utterly homophobic. So the idea was our outputs and our people was what we wanted PrideAM. It was never going to be an agency, so it was never going to do comms work for brands in that sense, but it was there to protect our people and support our people, but also to be part of improving our outputs as an industry. And that's what all of the versions of it around the world, the three of them, actually there's one in Ireland as well, actually, now I understand, that's what they do. And we in Canada, we've set up an awards program for recognizing great LGBTQ work by brands and agencies. We even do consultancy, where we actually recently had a rather large financial client in Canada come to us and say, look, we've got this campaign. We would really like you to have a look at it. And we consulted with them to actually change the script to make it what they needed it to be and take out any possible criticism of it being homophobic. And so we're very open to working with brands and agencies to get to better work and actually to help them not be fearful of getting good representation out there in the marketplace. So yeah, it was aimed at helping our people, our community within the industry, and then improving our outputs.
Scott, I have one last question before I ask it. I just want to say thank you for sharing your stories, your journey, your lessons, and I encourage people to check out the ICA.ca to learn more. Also, if you want to check out PrideAM, it's prideam.org. Scott, last question is mentors. Who have been some mentors in the agency ecosystem? I mean, it could be board members of the ICA, and maybe a lesson you learned.
I would say that actually, here in Canada, actually, two of my former chairs, have been really influential on me. Andy Krupski, who's chair of one of our member agencies, The Hive, and Ira Baptiste, who's president of the Evolve Group. Andy's one of these people that flips on its head the notion that the older you get, you can't improve and learn and develop and be a great person. Andy has been in the industry for many years. He's a very, very well-respected guy, but probably one of the most open people I've ever worked with, in the sense of we have had conversations about some of the things he said and way he's approached things, and his first response is not to go, oh well, how could you? It's actually to go, okay, I need to know more, tell me, and I want to learn. And I wish that there were many others of that senior nature in our industry that would be like him, actually. Ira Baptiste, just refueled my desire to be my true, authentic self. Ira is an amazing Black woman in our industry who is exactly who she is in every way, shape, or form, whether it's with clients, presenting the industry, and just that genuine, authentic, and actually really knowledgeable, respected industry practitioner. I've never quite worked with somebody like her. And the other person actually I would give a shout out is to Leah Power, my EVP. I think when Leah and I talked before she started it, we talked about what she was wanting to do and be in the world, and she wants to really influence and change our industry. She's the one who designed all the value-based pricing. She presents at procurement conferences across the world, etc. And Leah makes me a better person. One of the things that I'm very good at is ideas, and I'll advocate and I'll shout my mouth. But Leah is so good at putting a cerebral and a delivery overlay to that. She helps me get things done in a way that's really senior and makes me put my money where my mouth is. The ICA is better and I'm better. Leah makes me want to do better, and is a phenomenal person to work with. And there are many other people that have inspired me over the years, but it's
kind of the
ones are in my mind right now.
Scott, is it kind of like the head and the heart situation?
Yeah, a bit. Yeah. And what's great is that Leah has the heart. She knows what she wants this industry to be, and she's determined to get us there. And she's as brave as I am in saying the things that need to be said in the industry. But she'll then also challenge me, go, you've made that statement, so what's your alternative, and what are you going to put on the table to help people get there? And holds my feet to the fire on delivery, which makes the ICA so much more robust. Yeah. And actually, the other person I'd shout out is my husband. I know this is really obvious. I am not a creative person. And my husband's a former architect turned home baker, and now is an award-winning television presenting baker. And watching somebody who's naturally creative and capable of delivering things, what he can do with flavors, and I'm just blown away. He is such a natural TV person as well, in a way that I thought I was, but no, I think people would find me very irritating on television. He has that calmness and knowledge, and inspires, and is, at least once a month on things like The Social and CTV's Your Morning, and what he does with black garlic, what he does with crickets, what he does with, in the most amazing baked desserts and breads and things like that is phenomenal. And so he reminds me of what I do in my job, which is to protect great creative thinking people, and to work with them, and then go home and see somebody naturally creative in that way keeps me going, and what is quite a tough job.
Scott, I'm going to be the first one to thank you. Thanks for sharing the journey. And everyone check out the ICA.ca and PrideAM.org. And we'll see everyone next time. Scott, thanks so much.
Thank you very much.
What I got, you can't buy. It resides between my eyes. Walked through the fire, came out better on the other side. See, life's like a beach if you find the sailing right now. I'm feeling like $100 grand.